Welcome friends to another r/prorevenge video. My pro tip of the day is to hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. It's the single greatest way to support this channel. And our first story of the day is by Shimshon. So you like using someone else's laundry detergent? This revenge was taken by a friend of mine, but I thought it would be perfect for this sub. The story took place about 20 years ago, when many houses still had shared washing machines/washing kitchens. My friend was living in such a house and using the shared washing machine. One day he noticed that more detergent was gone than he had used. He kept it there like most others. So he marked the bottle with his name and secretly marked the level of liquid. Soon his suspicion was confirmed and he went to confront the neighbors. None admitted to using his detergent, but they agreed to talk to spouses and kids, etc. However, nothing changed. Someone still kept using his detergent. So he asked the neighbors again to cut it out, to no avail. This made him angry and he decided to take some revenge. He poured a good amount of bleach into the detergent for colored clothes and left it there as usual, marked with his name and everything. Well, the neighbors used it once more, but never again after that. Be honest, if someone kept using your supplies to wash their clothes for free, and no matter what you did, whether you talked to everybody or not, they did not stop using your stuff, would you want to go and add a little bleach to it to make sure that you really drive the message to them? Or is it too far messing their clothes up like that? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Pragmatic. Don't play games in the workplace, kids. This happened last year. I work in care supporting people with challenging behaviors and neurodiverse conditions, and as you can imagine, it can be particularly demanding and difficult, especially so during this wonderful little pandemic we found ourselves in. So let's set the scene. It's a busy little morning in our specialist residential home, and there's 3 of us in all busting to get the morning routines done. Medication rounds, cleaning through the bedrooms and flats, cleaning every single freaking handle and switch in the facility due to COVID, maintaining several pieces of paperwork surrounding the service and clients, all the while having to ensure we support the clients, who make things difficult on a good day. It's the start of the week and fresh paperwork is required to make the daily notes. However, it's been non-stop and we haven't really had the chance to check. That particular paperwork can wait until the end of the period. Getting the routines done first is priority. Now, we have a manager and deputy manager in the office, and both of them expect you to go down and check on them, make sure they have drinks and food at lunch because they're oh so busy. I usually don't mind them and that, but about 3 hours into the period, I have a coworker come up to me. He turns to me and says, "They've been timing how long it'll take for someone to get the paperwork. They've been sat there timing us." Freaking livid. All 3 of us had busted butt all morning to ensure that these people have their needs met and also doing our best to meet the needs of the service, and we haven't stopped. And what are the oh so busy management doing? Timing us. Not one of them decided to pop up and have a quick look-see to ensure it wasn't a case of bone idleness and just assumed we weren't making an effort. Well, let me show you how busy I freaking am. Lunch is approaching and everyone is absolutely famished, so I've hopped on to start the process of cooking. As I've counted heads and prepared the plates, my coworker points out that I haven't set out plates for management. So I tell them we've been far too busy this morning, far too busy to even grab the fresh paperwork. So if they want lunch, they'll have to come up and tell me. He gives me that look. "You really gonna do this?" And setting the food to the plates, I tell him, "I'll time them." Took them an hour before the deputy comes up kicking off about not having been provided her lunch and how busy they've been. I hear her ask who did lunch. The moment my boys point out it was OP, she didn't even confront because they knew darn well why and would hear it from me too. I guess they didn't fancy that conversation. Didn't hear anything again until they tacked it on at the end of a team meeting, ensuring they're offered lunch several weeks later. I just giggled internally, and to this day, I still feel good about making her miss a meal for playing the runt. Let me get this straight. The managers have time to time you. They get to just sit downstairs and they expect you to come offer them lunch? They act like it isn't a huge courtesy that the managers themselves even have the option to get lunch. The managers need to get up off their lazy butts, go to the lunchroom and get lunch themselves. Is it too hard to time when lunch is being made so they can go get it? Apparently not. This next story is by Mateus GC. How my teacher got back at his cheating girlfriend. So this is something that my math teacher told us to make us relax after a math test. My teacher, Mr. H, was 18 at the time and in his last school year, and he had a girlfriend who I'll call B. He was having what he felt like was the perfect time of his life. And then he discovered that she was cheating with 5 guys from another neighborhood. He thought about breaking up, but he started thinking about it and thought, her dad gave me a job that I can arrive late and leave earlier, and her mother gives me free food every day, so why should I break up? So he continued pretending like nothing was happening and started dating another girl who I'll call Z. He explained the situation to her, and the two just waited. He would enjoy free food and a great job for a while, and when the party of the end of the school year arrived, he broke up with her, so no one could dance with her that day and danced with Z. Is it fair to keep on taking stuff from her parents even though the relationship is all but dead? I don't know morally if it's too wrong of a thing to do, or if the average person would say, you know what, she's cheating on him and she got him all that stuff, use it all you want till you leave. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. Our next story is by Sweet Pursuit. Wanna steal my popcorn? Hope you like salt. Back when I was dating my now wife, she would love to just bug the crap out of me. One of her favorites was if we went to the movies, say she didn't want popcorn. Then once I sit down, take the biggest handful she could from the top saying, nom nom popcorn or something like that. So one night we go to the movies, get to our seats, and I ask if she wants anything, just a drink. So I get our drinks and my popcorn. Then it hits me, she's already tricked me. So I go over to the popcorn station, put my normal salt and butter on it, and it's all perfect. But I finish it off by putting a huge dose of salt in the center, like way too much. I go sit and wait. The movie starts and I'm eating around the edges, and then the time comes. Giant hand of popcorn directly into her mouth while she laughs at me. Then the salt hits, and I'm cracking up. After that, she would just ask to share the popcorn. Married 16 years now. I feel like it's an unwritten rule that if you're going to a place and you get food for yourself and your significant other says, no, I'm not really hungry, or I don't really want anything, just expect them to want to share the food with you regardless. I think the real problem is they might not feel that hungry or they might not want to eat that much, but when that food comes out and you see it, you can't help yourself, you want a little bit. And they're your significant other. Who else better to share stuff with, right? And our next story is by Sean Grande. I'm submitting fake applications to a company who refuses to give me an interview on a position they're struggling to hire for. I've applied to an entry to mid-level position that's been reopened several times over the past 2 months. I am perfectly qualified with years of experience in the appropriate field. I've reached out directly to several hiring managers and have been extremely professional for a position that isn't getting a ton of applicants and that they're struggling to fill. I have been unable to even land a screening interview over the phone. So now I'm making fake resumes and emails to spam them. I've been in contact with a few of the managers on the project and see that they're posting on LinkedIn often trying to get people to apply due to lack of applicants. My main issue is not even being able to get a phone call screening interview. If I had gotten an interview and they went a different way, I would have absolutely had no issue with that. Honestly, as many times as OP says they're qualified, as many times as OPs put their application in, for one reason or another, they're not wanting to move forward with you. And legitimately, I think what OP's doing is more on the harassment side of things. Like you've tried 5+ times, you post fake emails and spam them. At some point, you kind of just have to be like, give it up, move on. I'm actually kind of confused why they're so hung up on this one thing. The next story belongs to the jazz music. Boss's lazy daughter gets her comeuppance. When I was in my early 20s, I took a job in a call center doing tech support and warranty stuff for some big brand TVs/DVD players. Like most jobs that I hated but needed at the time, I got this one because I'm bilingual. It was a relatively small operation. We were contracted. The call center staffed half a dozen people, and downstairs was a refurbishing line for the products we supported. I was, at varying intervals, one of the 1 to 2 bilingual agents on staff. Enter Stacy. Stacy was the assistant manager of the call center. She was also the company owner's daughter. Let's call him Richard. Like I said, small operation. Stacy was a thorn in my freaking side from day one. She was the archetypal boss's kid. She did sweet nothing all day. We were all supposed to take calls. She did not. She had no management responsibilities and basically refused to touch her phone unless we were all on calls. And even then, she'd usually let them stew for 5 to 10 minutes in the hopes that someone else would end their call and pick it up. She even had the gall to hound us to grab the next call while she sat there gold bricking. I would eventually learn from the actual manager, Max, who, by the way, took 3 times as many calls as Stacy despite having actual responsibilities, that her promotion was an attempt to get her to do some god-darn work that backfired spectacularly. She did less work than ever once she got her new title. I tried talking to Max about it, as I developed quite a rapport with him and the other agents, and I knew they were all struggling with her behavior. He said he'd try to encourage her to pick up the slack, but he couldn't really do anything about it. He was hamstrung. We were all basically powerless to do anything. At a certain point, I found myself as the only bilingual agent there. Side note, the only other bilingual agent at the time was useless. All she did was confuse and piss off customers, and literally punched Max in the face when he fired her. Freaking wild. After a particularly harrowing week of getting slammed while Stacy figuratively and literally kicked her feet up all day, one Monday, I had enough. I turned my cell off and messed off for the day. Frankly, I hoped that would be the end of my career there. The next day, I decided to pick up when they call. It was Max. I told Max I was done and why. He commiserated but pleaded with me to reconsider. Eventually, he got Richard on the line, and they managed to convince me to at least sit down and talk about it. Clearly, having literally no one to pick up the non-English queue was proving a challenge. The next day, I strolled in nice and late in the morning and went to speak to Richard. This will always be one of my favorite memories and a great personal victory. I sat down and I let him have it with both barrels. I told him his daughter was lazy and irresponsible. Her promotion was a joke, and that she was tanking the morale of everyone else she worked with. I basically sat there for 10 minutes ranting at this man about what a piece of poop his daughter is. And when I was done, the only thing he wanted to know was what it would take to get me back. I told him I wanted a raise from $12 an hour to $14 an hour, which was plenty decent at the time. And I wanted her to pick up the freaking phone when it rings, same as the rest of us. He agreed. I told him I'd come back after lunch so he would have time to talk to her. When I returned, I looked over at Stacy in her little corner, phone to her ear. Satisfied, I went to my desk and got to work. I would later learn from Max that while I was gone, Richard had attempted to man the non-English queue himself, which apparently was pretty funny because he only spoke English. I'm not sure how he expected to just wing an entire god-darn language, but I was happy he'd made the attempt. Knowing he'd been forced to debase himself like that was the cherry on top. Stacy was far from perfect after that, but I'd successfully turned the tables on her. When she'd start to slack, I'd either ignore the calls until she picked up, the other agents knew what I was doing and would let it go too, or just straight up tell her something like, "We all just got off calls. You can take this one." It was heavenly. I was the only one who could speak to her like that, so I became a bit of a hero to the other agents who were happy to have some relief from the phones and a less soul-crushing power dynamic at work. To me, the revenge was that Stacy not only had to accept that some random plebe could effectively order her around in her daddy's company, and she had to actually work for possibly the first time in her life, and she had to live with the fact that her daddy, rather than defending her in the face of my verbal onslaught, basically gave me a bonus for pooping all over her. After about a year, I decided I didn't want to live like this and went off to enroll in and drop out of college again. But man, I'll never forget that feeling. This is definitely an example of why, if you're working at a place and you can carve out an absolute niche that nobody could ever do better than you in, you're most likely going to get yourself some pretty good job security. And with that comes a lot of influence and the potential for raises. They can't just overlook you and replace you. Don't be afraid to keep that pressure on if you're in that position. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.